Hello and welcome to Aquarium Dilemmas. I'm your host, Science Gal Aquatics. I'm Carrie, and this is my co-host.
Jesse, and welcome.
Yes, welcome. Today I'm excited. I feel like today's going to be, they're all great episodes, but today I feel like it's going to be a great conversation.
I think so too.
So thank you for being here and listening. And if you're a member and you're watching this podcast, thank you so much again. Thank you.
Well, today we're going to jump into our experience and our experience with fish.
Yeah, since this is a fish podcast.
Well, meaning we're going to do a top 10 of what we believe are the easiest and readily available fish to keep and how we do it.
Yeah, I was working on the tanks doing maintenance yesterday, and I was like, I think I've kept enough fish and have enough experience through the years of how I kept them. I still always recommend going in detail and going down the rabbit hole of research if you want to keep any of these. But just kind of thinking over the years, some of the species of fish that I've kept that they've definitely been on the easier side, but I've definitely had the least amount of trouble when it comes to getting them home and even just trying to find them shopping around. They're not as hard as others to find.
I would go with a well-rounded of ease to care for, easier parameters,
Easier on the budget.
yeah, all of it included for anyone from beginners to experts.
Yeah.
And you can stretch out the comfort zone there of what you want to do with these fish, but these are the top 10 for us that you could do multiple things with.
Yeah, they're definitely, there's probably one, if you've listened to the podcast and know us well, that you'll probably definitely guess, but there's some on here that I'm like, yeah, I would highly recommend anywhere from a beginner to an expert to, if you haven't kept one of these or two of these on the list, I highly recommend it because they are definitely fun to keep. They're not just easy and in the sense they just kind of, hang out. I think that they're really enjoyable and you'll get a lot of rewarding moments when you come to watch them and feed them and care for them.
Yes.
And there's not as much stress involved.
Well, should we start out?
Yeah, I want you to start. What's one on the top of your head? Like what's one?
Well, let's start out with the controversial one then.
Oh, okay. Which one is that?
Let's go with the beta beta.
Yeah, beta.
The beta beta, because I mean, traditionally everyone sees them in the fish stores. You walk in the little cups, so
yeah, I definitely.
That's kind of the either the starter fish, or if you're in the beta beta world, they do a lot of stuff with them.
Yeah, and I put this one on my list too, just in the sense that for a long time I didn't know what I was doing when I was caring for them, and a lot of times they didn't live as long as they probably could have, but still in all the mistakes, I still kept them for a while. And now we've done a podcast on it kind of recently, but now when I get them home, I have them in a heavily planted, filtered, heated, at least 10-gallon aquarium. And that's how, if you want to get one for the first time, that's how I would recommend you keeping them to set yourself up for a little bit more success. But I think that they are hardy in the sense that the poor things, when you go in there, they're in the little cups and but even through all the mistakes of things I've done wrong in the past, I would say they're still pretty hardy through all the things I've done. And if you haven't kept them, just set yourself up a little bit better with a heated, planted, at least 10-gallon tank.
Yeah, I think size-wise, 10 plus is better for them, in my opinion. Easier to maintain the water parameters, obviously, for them. And then going into temperature, what's the temperature range you like to keep them at?
I like to heat them. I like to heat their tanks. I think that,
Yes, but the temperature range.
I have them with heaters that they don't necessarily all have dials, and they're kind of preset, and they get a range between 76 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. I wouldn't go over 80 by any means, and they're not a colder water. They might get a little lethargic and kind of slow if their water's colder and get stressed. So if you keep your house warmer where it's 76 to 80, then you could probably get away with room temperature. But if you keep your house on the colder side and it's below like 76 degrees, 75 degrees Fahrenheit, then I would definitely put a heater in their tank. For me, that's how I've had the most success, and how I recommend you keeping them.
Well, and the other controversial thing about them, that's why I wanted to start out, was that you can only have just that fish, which kind of leads into our list of our other fish.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the personality, but for the sake of keeping it on this list, it's definitely one of the easier ones I've kept, but it's personality dependent. So if you do have plans to keep them in a community tank, then I would kind of keep an eye on it, because not all of them get along with others. But we've done deeper dives on that one specifically, and they're fun fish. But like I said, you can have nice ones, grumpy ones, happy ones, kind of pouty ones, really personable ones. Like, it's just super dependent on the betta itself. So
makes sense. That's understandable. All right, I started it out with the controversial beta. What do you have next?
I am surprised by how much I really enjoy this fish, but white cloud minnows are definitely on this list of some that they're just, no matter, well, how can I say this? I've gotten them at chain stores, and I've gotten them at local pet stores, and it seems like no matter where I get them, I still recommend, if you can, look into where, as much information of where you're getting your fish. But these they're pretty hardy. And I don't usually have too many problems with them when it comes to losing them or having sick ones or anything like that. I have short finned and long finned white cloud minnows, and I have kept them inside and outside. I feel like they do better in colder waters in the tubs that we have outside, and we keep them year round. But they're definitely ones that are easy to find. They're easy to keep. They're pretty easy to breed. They're easy to maintain in the sense that they do prefer colder temperatures. You don't have to worry about heating their tank. So if you just want to keep a tank at room temperature, they're really easy, and they're as colorful as neon tetras. I feel like they're still eye-catching, but I have less problems with the white clouds overall than when I keep neon tetras in my water in my fish room.
Yes. Well,
But they're fun. They're fun to watch swim around. They're fast little swimmers, and like I said, they're pretty easy to breed for an egg scattering fish.
yeah, and they do prefer our water, I believe, to a little bit harder type water. And what I enjoy about them is their temperature parameters are
It's pretty wide.
off the charts.
Yeah, it's
So to speak, it's off the charts. You can go, like you mentioned, we keep them outside year round in one tub, and they have no problems going from 80 degrees to in the winter down to.
That's a natural. I wouldn't, if you're keeping them inside your house, I wouldn't recommend. If you can keep the temperature just a consistent temperature, do that. But if you're keeping them outside, it's a natural swing from summer.
Yes, it's a natural progression.
Yeah. Because inside, I don't do that. But outside, 100%. I don't.
Well, I mean, you can't. Outside is up to the elements. Inside, what are you keeping them at now?
I don't heat their tank inside, and we keep our house relatively warm for you, it's a little chilly for me. But I keep them 68. I would say you could keep them 68 degrees Fahrenheit to like 74, 75 degrees Fahrenheit. But like I said, I feel personally they do better in a colder water, more room temperature type environment than a heated 80 degree, 78, 80 degree Fahrenheit tank. Now outside when we do keep them, they breed in the spring, like spring temperatures. I would say 70s when it's outside, 70s to like 80s. And when it gets cold outside, they don't breed. And we keep a lot of floating plants in that. It's a 300-gallon tub, so it's not a smaller tub that will freeze solid because it does get cold here. But they're not breeding outside year round. We get the fry when it's starting. It's not hot. They still breed when it's hot, but I feel like we get the most fry when it's just that spring weather.
Yeah, I mean the spring.
If that makes any sense.
Weather where the water's
starting to heat up a little bit.
Yeah, the water's somewhere between 50 and 60 degrees, and the outside temperature.
I'm trying to think on the fly.
The ambient temperature is 70 degrees, 60 to 70, but the water temperature is still between 50 and 60.
I guess my point in all of that rambling is you could probably have no problems breeding them year round if you maintain a consistent temperature where there's not that swing. But keeping them outside all year round, I don't expect to see fry right now in November because it is starting to cool off. So if you want to breed them all the time, there's ways to do that. But here in our environment outside, I can't do that in the winter time. But keeping them inside, I don't heat their tank. I keep it on the cooler side. And I still have a lot of floating plants in their tank. I have planted as well as floating, but I have a more variety floating plants in the ones that, I feel like they just do better. Their eggs stick to that and their fry kind of hang out on the surface, and they're extremely small and they're pretty easy to miss and blend into all that because they're smaller fish in general, but their fry are tiny, but they're still so cute. So hopefully that made sense.
It makes sense. A heavily planted tank.
Mm-hmm. It's just when the females, you can kind of see their eggs. They swim around those floating plants, and their eggs just kind of stick to them. And you can if you look real carefully, you can see them. But the females, they're it's noticeable from even just the top view that they're pretty swollen and they're full of eggs, but they're definitely one that I've never thought I would enjoy keeping as much as I do. And they're definitely on the easier side. They're super colorful and you don't have to worry as much as keeping their tank warm all the time because they enjoy a cooler tank. And they're just cool fish.
Well, let's go with another one to kind of follow that one up.
We'll go with there's a lot of different Plecostomus out there, but I prefer, for this list, it was kind of a mix of two. They're definitely the smaller ones, but I like the high-fin Pleco or Plecostomus and the bristled nose Plecostomus.
Oh, you took a swing on me there because that
those
was
two.
not where I was going next.
It was kind of a tie, but I really enjoy those two Plecostomus for either a beginner, advanced, middle. If you just want to add a tank, it's your new tank, first tank, whatever aquarium it is, and you're wanting to try or get another one. I like the bristle nose and I like the high fin Pleco.
Well, and also readily available. In my opinion, easy to care for, and also, for the most part, unless you're keeping a very aggressive fish, a very good community fish.
Yeah, I like aquariums that are, there's something at the bottom and there's something swimming around. And for a bottom dwelling fish, it's one that it doesn't hide like the clown plecosimus. I always call them plecos. Like those, they're easy. They're super easy in the sense that you never know if they're there or not. Like I had one clown that I didn't, for 6 months. I thought she was gone. I didn't even know. And then I was like, whoa, it's still there. So they're really easy in the sense that you never see them. So if you want a bottom dweller that it's not going to necessarily come up to the glass and like, hey, you're home, but it's a bottom dwelling fish that you will be able to see for this type, because a lot of plecos that they're talented at hiding. But with these two, there is a lot of times that I often have them in my guppy tanks, and it was just really fun to watch them kind of scoot around and eat, and then the guppies swimming around, and they don't get very big. So if you have something that's a 20, 30 gallon, then, and even at the very beginning, I had them in a 10 for a gallon tank for a very small amount of time, and then I moved them up. But they're one that's not going to get super large to where they're going to outgrow a tank. And like you said, you can often find them. The only one that I had a lot of difficulty with was the rubber lip plecosimus, but for the sake of talking about the ones I've had the best overall luck with that are on the smaller side, I do like to feed them veggie rounds and bloodworms, and I had driftwood in their tank and everything to have a good environment set up. I didn't often have them uprooting or messing with the plants that I had, but if you want a bottom dwelling fish, don't have it just be your cleanup crew. They do whatever one you decide to go with. If you want to keep them, do a lot of research on their diet because they do need to be fed.
Well, and on your substrate factor, we usually go with we always plant 90% of our tanks are planted. Mm-hmm. And we also try not to go with any sort of substrate that is too sharp if we're going to be adding a bottom dwelling type fish.
Yeah, that's definitely something I pay more attention to over the years of fish keeping with experience. But I would never recommend anything super sharp and like abrasive or anything like that. But that's a good point. I'm right now in a phase of using finer sand. But if you do use gravel, just make sure it's more rounded or just not as sharp. Sometimes with river, like the gravel we get at the river or the creek, sometimes it can be a little sharp. But yeah, just use something a little bit not so abrasive and you should be A-okay.
Yep.
If that's the right word.
A-okay.
You said it
is A-okay.
right. Hopefully you're taking this
and then on now this kind of all ties together when we get the list complete. On the water parameters on this particular, our opinion, easy fish. Where are you at with your water parameters on this?
With these, I usually keep them with my guppy tanks, and that's a hint for the future too. So they're usually 74 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Honestly, usually it's like 76 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit, but whether I'm using, like I said before, a heater that they just you can't preset, you can't dial them onto a specific heat setting like some of them. They're just preset. So I think there's like 2 degrees either way of where it could be.
Variation.
Yeah. So they're usually between 76 to 78, but I would say there's a sweetness between like, I don't know, 74, 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, would you say? I mean, you've kept them too.
Well, I think 76 is the key number. You might want to just go ahead and remember that number for the rest of the list coming up.
But, and with Plecosimus, they like some flow. So if you have a spot that like the output or the input, it'd be the input that if it has like a high input rate, your pleco's probably going to be like in that spot in your aquarium.
Yes. They do enjoy flow, whether it come from your hang on the back filter or if you put a small wave maker, essentially fan in there, it will, they will enjoy, because they do enjoy filtering through everything, the plants, the substrate. They do enjoy that very much, which brings me to the other one that I enjoy very much, which is a bottom dweller. And I know you do as well, and another great bottom dweller substitute, the Corridoras.
Yeah. This is one that I'm super, out of all the ones that we'll talk about, is probably the one I have the least amount of experience in. I've only kept 2 different types. They've been the Panda Corridoras and the
Corridora Julii
are the ones we have upstairs. And they are the cutest little things ever. And they kind of tie into the Plecostomus. They're both armored catfish, and they scoot along the bottom. So you definitely, with these, probably need to pay really close attention to your substrate because they do have smaller mouths and you don't want them to cut on sharp rocks. And both times I've kept them, they've been on a sand substrate.
Yeah. Well, they're mouth feeler fish. They explore everything with their mouth. So the corridors especially.
I'm trying to think what that food was I fed them.
The corridors especially, I would go with a very small, fine, smooth substrate. And they stay on the smaller side. They don't get massive. And
there's some that can get a lot larger than the ones I've seen them at some of those shows.
Well,
but for our purposes, these 2 they do.
Well, these 2 that we specifically,
I would say what, about an inch,
inch and a half, inch and a half. But for our purposes, the fish that we have kept, the Corridor we have kept, smaller substrate, and they do not mess up our planted tanks.
No.
They just sift around through the sand and absolutely enjoy everything. I enjoy feeding them a sinking type wafer.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to look, but I think it was the API bottom feeder pellets. They were a smaller, pretty fast sinking pellet, and they really enjoy that. They really enjoy those pellets.
Yeah, I'll drop one in the tank. It will sink quite quickly, and I usually drop it right out in the middle, and within about 30 seconds to a minute.
Depending on the group, you might have to feed a few more pellets than one.
Well, no, I'm talking about the wafer one I use.
For upstairs.
The wafer one I use upstairs, it sinks very quickly. And within about 30 seconds to a minute, they seem to come out from wherever they are, because they're always sifting around.
They do good in groups. If you haven't kept them before, they do. If you can get a small group of like 5 or 6, they do best in a group. I wouldn't this isn't one that I recommend just going and getting one.
Yeah.
They do better in a group. But I know for the ones that we have upstairs, the Corridor Julii, I believe they enjoy, that tank is about 74 degrees, and they're a little bit on the cooler side. So this is also one that, depending on your species that you get for your aquarium, they might like more towards 78 degrees, 80 degrees, and there's some that like more around 74 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is one that it's not necessarily just one temperature fits all. Like guppies, you can kind of recommend a few, but this one's one that no matter what your fish, I guess, you decide to bring home, I always recommend you do your homework, but this is one that just because ours like 74 degrees, yours might not. So but they're really enjoyable. I just watching them scoot through the water column and around the bottom. They're just scooting around. They're so cute, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I love them so much.
Well,
so.
they're usually readily available at your local pet store, your main chain stores.
They seem to be, out of the ones we've talked about, probably, I would say, for a group about 5 or 6, it's probably gonna be about 40, $50 on the low end in our area. So they're probably one of the more expensive fish on this list, because you have to get, well, you don't have to get, but I highly recommend you get a group. So, but they're worth it. They're so worth it.
I agree to that.
Oh my goodness, I'm just thinking about them. They're so cute.
Well, and they are another community fish you can have with other fish that we're going to have on this list.
Yeah. Well, let's just go ahead and talk about guppies, because that's kind of the obvious one. And since everybody's heard me talk about guppies, why don't you talk about guppies? What do you know about guppies?
The fact that they're peaceful, easy to breed.
They're awesome and amazing.
The colors are stunning, and you can have, I mean, probably my greatest achievement is the 55 behind you that is the mutt guppy tank.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see at the moment, but guppies are great. There's not enough words in the dictionary that I know to describe my love for guppies. And I think that some in the hobby are definitely more hardy than others. And if you can get them from a breeder that you know, and they're definitely hardier, the color's better. But I've gotten some beautiful guppies too that's lasted a while from just the local chain stores. So they come, like you said, they come in every color that you can think of.
Well,
they're in every store.
We could do a whole podcast on, because I mean,
they're not horribly priced. I mean, you can get into some high-end trios that are like $80, but generally speaking, you do.
We could do a whole podcast just on tail types of guppies, and then you got Endler guppies. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
There's tons, and there's a guppy for everybody. Every fish keeper out there's a guppy for you. And I just don't have as many problems with guppies as compared to some other live bears that I've kept. There's another one on the list that I recommend, but they're definitely, out of a lot of the different live bears I kept, they're one of the easier ones. And I've kept them in colder water, and I've kept them in 80 degrees plus. Being outside in the smaller summer tub in the heart of the summer, it can get pretty hot out there. But they're not ones that can go super, super cold. If you're going to keep them in a colder water tank, I still wouldn't keep them below like 68, maybe 66 degrees Fahrenheit. But when that first chill hits, that first frost hits here outside, if there's any ones that I've just accidentally missed because it's hard to scoop them out, then there's a certain point, whereas the white clouds, they still can handle it and they're still good. The guppies, there's a point where too cold is too cold.
Yes. Well, that number I said to remember earlier, I think 76 is the number for the guppies. That seems to be the perfect number.
Yeah, I like that one because it's a happy medium. The fry are happy and the adults are happy. No one's in my world, everybody's happy. But they're, out of the live bears, if you want a fish that breeds, guppy's your choice.
Well, and also readily available.
They're so colorful.
Relatively easy temperature to keep, because most people keep their house around 70 degrees. So putting a heater in the tank to bump it up to 76 is not going to be that hard to do. And great community fish. We've already mentioned too, you can put some sort of little pleco in there. You can put corridors in there with them. A great community fish. You're going to have a lot of vibrant colors in there, and you can plant the tank.
It's a really active tank the tank you're talking about. There's
Yes.
a lot of movement and it's a lot of activity. But guppies are the one fish they'll always be in my heart. It was the first one I kept all by myself, and it's a good fish for the beginner all the way up to the experienced. And then if you want to have a tank in your house that has a lot of different just peaceful fish in it, like you said, guppies is a good way to go. And they're one that if you don't have a heater in your tank and it gets, let's say, a little chilly and it's 72 degrees Fahrenheit in your house, they're still going to be okay. They do best at 76, but they'll be okay if the water's, just a little bit on the colder. Not cold like White Cloud minnow cold, but you have a wide range of tank parameters that once they get acclimated, they do well in. And there's always that best, I always recommend heating their tank and having it heavily planted. But guppies are one that I feel like it's one of those like goldfish and betas that has learned with me through my mistakes.
Yes, and on everything we've listed so far, I don't think you've said it, is they all do enjoy a little bit. I wouldn't say it's crazy high, but they enjoy harder water and a little higher pH.
Yeah. And again, this list is for us and what we've kept personally, what we recommend. So I don't chase numbers. If they don't do well in my water, then chances are I will admire them in a tank that's best suited for them. We have hard water in this fish room, and all of these fish that I have kept and I recommend, that's what water we have.
Well, they enjoy harder water. Harder water, higher alkalinity, higher mineral
softer
content.
water, but I know I'm not going to chase it. So I'm a hard water fish keeper.
Well, you already mentioned the next one, so we'll just jump in there because
go for it. What's your opinion?
It was the one I was going to say.
Perfect.
Right after you went with the white clouds, because we've had much more success. They have a greater life outside. Goldfish.
Yes, it's. I would say, like I just mentioned, goldfish, bettas, and guppies are the top. Guppies are number one, but they're definitely that trio of fish has taught me a lot of lessons I needed to learn in fish keeping. And I love goldfish. Just to sit there and watch them swim and come up to the glass, and they can kind of go in any direction, and they always seem so happy, especially if given the right environment. They're just really enjoyable fish, and I really can just watch them for hours. But I've made the mistake. I've talked about it in another episode in the past where I kept them in a too small, heated environment, and that's goldfish need a larger tank. And like you said, now we keep them outside in the koi pond. They're outside year round. It gets really cold. In the summertime, it does get pretty warm here. There's days where it's 100 degrees. But that koi pond out of all the things we breed outside, that pond's inside the ground. So it does stay a little bit more chillier than the above ground tubs, even on those hotter days. But they have grown to a size that I never could have kept them inside. Yes. Even moving them to the 75 gallon. Once I realized, hey, you're doing this wrong, I moved them to a larger tank. I took the heater out, and they did well. But even just moving them outside, they've done better. And I'm lucky we have that pond outside, that koi pond. But if if you don't have anything bigger than a 20 long or a 10 gallon, I wouldn't recommend getting a goldfish because they do need a bigger environment. But if you can give them a 55 gallon, a 75 gallon plus, and it's a little bit on the colder side, which is nice because you don't have to worry about heating their tank. They're comfortable at room temperature. Then they are just, it's a fish that I can just watch them swim all day long.
Well, I do have a great story about this. After all of our mistakes / mostly your mistakes, I have a friend that has a 75, and he has 4 fancy goldfish in it. It is a not heated tank. I made sure and asked him. He was like, well, I got some more fish. After all of his others finally passed away, he's like, so I got just some cheaper fancy goldfish from local big box store. Wonderful looking goldfish. Absolutely. And then I got him into plants, and subsequently, because the tank is not heated, it is a big enough tank for those 4 goldfish. They're not even messing with the plants.
Yeah.
He has a relatively planted tank with 4 fancy goldfish.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to...
At room temperature, which for most people in our area, he keeps his tank, it stays around 68 degrees.
Yeah. They're so fascinating. They're not picky, and you can find goldfish in nearly... Sometimes they're sold so cheap because they're just sold as feeder fish, even though I would never recommend you feeding a goldfish as a feeder fish because it's just not good calories at all for what you're wanting to feed. But you can get goldfish for 25 cents up to like $300, and they're just really fascinating. They're just a really fascinating fish to watch swim.
Oh, there's all different types of goldfish. I mean, you go to the shows.
There's some fancy ones that I probably will never get to keep. They're outside my budget, but I'm happy with just the common goldfish. Just watching them grow, because they do grow pretty large, which, given the opportunity and the environment, they grow quite large, and it's just really fun to watch them, and they're just really pretty.
Well, they are. And the other fun fact is, do not overfeed your goldfish. Goldfish do not have stomachs.
Yes, and if you, for some reason, don't dump any fish into your local waterways. I'm surprised by... There's a lot of goldfish that shouldn't be where they're at, so don't ever do that either. But, yeah.
Yes, because they can survive in a wide variety of water parameters.
But
like we were speaking of keeping them outside, they are just like the koi. They slow down. They go into almost a hibernation type state.
When it gets that cold, and we stop feeding too. I don't feed them in the winter. Their metabolism slows down. There's no need for them to eat when it gets that cold, but if you want to there's all kinds of, they're just really they're just fascinating and awesome.
They are.
And I highly recommend it. If you haven't kept them and you do have a large enough tank, I highly recommend you get one just to watch them grow. They're fun fish.
They are.
And they kind of just get thrown under they're just feeders, and they're not. They're really fascinating. But like I said, they're one that I've learned some hard lessons of. I can't believe I kept them like that. But I'm glad I finally learned, and now I get to... that one we have outside, it's huge. It's it's bigger than my hand. It's huge. But do you have one up next?
I'll let you go. I just went, so it's your turn.
Well, what about rice fish? What do you think about the Medaka rice fish that we've kept in the past?
I think their colors can be very stunning. They're another very small fish.
Yeah.
They do handle not as wide a variety as water parameters as the minnow, the goldfish, but they do kind of stick in there with, I would say, the more of the
I just haven't tested it.
guppy.
They're colder water. They done great. The only thing is we had the white clouds in a larger tub. And when we got the rice fish in, I had them in a smaller tub. That would most definitely freeze all the way through. So I had to move them in, but they're a colder, I wouldn't heat their tank. And I had the Pearl Galaxy Medaka rice fish and the Blue Daisy Medaka rice fish. And when I got them in, they're egg scatterers. And I don't know what I was thinking. I thought they were just going to be extremely difficult. And again, we kept them outside, and they weren't. They started immediately. They were breeding like crazy. We had more fry than I knew what to do with. And I would say that the Blue Daisies were a little bit more skittish than the Pearl Galaxies, but they did best in a group. They were a colder water, and we did keep them outside. I brought in the Blue Daisies inside in a 20 long at one point, and they did breed. I did get fry, just nowhere near the point we did when we kept them outside. But I would say they probably could handle being out there year round if we had a larger tub, because they definitely, it's not a species that I would in any way heat their tank.
Yeah, more of a room temperature 68-degree fish.
Yeah, I would say 60, like high 60s. If you keep them inside, 68 degrees Fahrenheit would be really an ideal temperature. Because when I did have them inside in that 20 long, I did not heat their tank, but it gets, our fish room's in the basement, so it does just naturally maintain more towards the low 70s versus the high 60s, if that makes sense. So, but they are, like the color of those Blue Daisy rice fish they had blue bodies with like red eyes, and they were really stunning, and they were surprisingly, I didn't lose any, and I got them in. Like I said, I've only kept those two for a couple of years. I had them for a while, but they were unbelievably stunning. They were a lot easier to keep than I expected, and I thought for an egg scattering type fish I was going to have a lot of trouble in learning curve when it came to breeding them. And we had hundreds of fry outside and just a couple inside, and they just immediately started breeding outside, and we kept them pretty identical to the white clouds, but in a smaller tub. We had a lot of floating plants, and these, you could see on the females, you could see the eggs they look like little grapes on the belly, and she would just swim around the floating plants, and those you could see her just literally swimming and sticking eggs to the floating plants in those tubs. And it was more in the morning time you would see them kind of doing that, but it was kind of exciting to like get up and go watch them and see if they had eggs and watch them swim around. And the fry, I mean, they're rice fish. Their babies are the size, they're teeny tiny. So you would just see like little glowing eyeballs before you would see any body. And they're just a really fascinating fish. And you don't
literally smaller than the grain of rice.
You don't have to worry about heating their tank. I would say that if you want to keep them in a community group, depending on the rice fish, like I said, the Pearl Galaxies came more up to the surface, whereas the Blue Daisies kind of they hid under the leaf litter more. So depending on what type you have, their personalities might be a little bit different, but it's no matter what, I would recommend getting a group of, again, like 5 to 6 versus 1.
Yeah. It's more of a group fish, and it could be a community fish as long as it was with a peaceful, another very peaceful fish.
Yeah.
Back to your favorite guppy.
They are ones that I did scoop out the fry and put them in another container, whereas inside I just wanted to know what would happen. And they're ones that do have a tendency to eat their fry. It seemed like once they got to a certain point in growth, they left them alone. But if you do plan on breeding them and keeping them together, you might. This is one that you'll probably lose some fry
If
to
you
their
don't
parents.
if you don't separate them.
If you don't separate.
Predation is prevalent.
Well, do you have one on your list, or you want me to go again?
Go again.
I think this is one that I've recently kept. It's the only time I've kept it, and I am really enjoying it. And I would say, well, first off, the name is the long white long skirt tetra, but the variation that's probably more easily found in the pet store is the black long skirt tetra. Even though I haven't kept them, their personalities seem to, from what I've kept of the white skirt, they're probably pretty similar, and they are very chill, amazing tetra. And I just like to go sit and watch them. There's points where they just kind of look like they're floating, and there's other times they're swimming together. We do have a group of probably, like, I would say 8. They take all different types of food. We have them with corridoras and angelfish, and it's just a really peaceful 55-gallon, or no, it's the 75-gallon tank upstairs. And I really dig. I didn't have and these fish there's been a couple points of keeping them that I thought I was going to lose them to various sicknesses due to other fish. But they've come through everything unfazed. They've been through another fish that I had in there, had ick, and then we had some some fungus on something in there that we were trying to treat. And all them tetra, we've had them for probably, I don't know.
It's been a while.
It's been a while now. They've come through everything unscathed. So knock on wood, everything's good. But they're beautiful. And even though I haven't kept the black skirt, I do really enjoy looking at them when I see them. But we do have the white long skirt tetra, and they're just a really nice, peaceful, standalone or community fish. They do have long, flowy fins, so you don't want to put them with any type of fin nippers, but even though we do have them with some small angels right now, they're on the peaceful side themselves, so it's all working out.
Yeah, I was going to say that's another one that you would have to kind of be careful with, but it would be a good community fish, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that's the tank that I've had. I want it to be full of different types of mosses. So I do have it it's a sand substrate. It's planted in the sense that it's our moss tank. There's all different types of mosses in that tank, and it looks really cool. And then we have the heater in that tank is 76 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yep. And we have floating plants as well in that tank, and everything. The angels that are in there, they do not mess with them. They actually seem to almost come out and swim with the tetra. It's kind of almost elusive in the fact that you're like, are they part of their group? Because the angels will come out together and will come out and swim with the tetra, and they'll all just kind of glide through the water.
I was really nervous about it in the beginning, but I was like, man, this is really working out. And it's, like I said, it's almost like, I know it's an aquarium, but it just, sometimes it looks like they're just kind of floating, and it almost looks like a pitcher, even though it's an aquarium. Like it's just really peaceful.
Well, and size-wise, they are a little bigger. For what we were all talking about, basically earlier, when you're talking about your rice fish and your white cloud minnows, you're basically talking nano fish, in my opinion. However, these tetra are about 2 inches.
Yeah.
They're about 2 inches long, so they're a little bigger. However, they are, from our estimation, very, very peaceful.
Yeah, and this is one that I haven't bred yet. So if we do get to breed them, if all goes well, maybe in the future, then maybe we'll give you an update. But this is one on the list that we have not bred.
No.
But they're awesome. So, like I said, if it's a highly recommended, easier side of things fish that we highly recommend.
Well, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are tetra lovers. We are
Oh
as
my
well.
gosh, yes.
So that's another very good community option that if you do like tetra, they can be kept with other things as well.
Yeah. Well, I guess moving on, another one on the list would be swordtails. I've had a lot of good luck with swordtails. I haven't kept as many over the years as guppies. I've kept, let me think, the calico swordtail, the neon swordtails, and I think there's been one or two others that I just can't think of off the top of my head.
I know we've kept a lot of different type of swords.
I think I've kept 4 or 5 over the years, and they've bred. They just haven't bred as easily as the guppies. They don't, in our area, we don't get as big selection of a variety of swordtails unless we go to the auction as we do guppies. But I keep them in very similar, if not the exact same type tank environments. I just give the swordtails a slightly larger tank. Whereas the guppies, I might start in a 10 or 20. The swordtails, I start in a 20 or 30, if that makes sense.
Well, I know they are stunning to look at.
I love swordtails. Oh my
They're
gosh.
absolutely beautiful fish. The water parameters relatively the same.
Yeah, planted.
Planted heavily, usually.
Heated. I heat my live. The guppies and the swordtails for those live bears on the list, those tanks I do heat.
Well, and I would say the only other one about swords is sometimes they can be like a little mean, I guess you would say, or aggressive.
Yeah.
They
I wouldn't go as far as saying aggressive, but they can, depending on, some can be a little bit on the nippier side, but not nippy in the sense they're going to eat them, just nippy in the sense they're trying to like almost investigate and keep them out, like just move on, if that makes sense. But I've had the calico swordtail ones that I kept were really peaceful. They didn't really mind anything. But the neon swordtail ones that were larger, they kind of, they just preferred a tank of their own.
Yeah, so with the swords being said that they could be a community fish, you're just going to have to know the personality of that species of sword. And obviously you always kept them as at least a trio.
Yes.
Would be the best way to describe that. Because for the most part, you were breeding some of them.
I guess moving back just a little bit, when I was thinking, when I tried to keep swordtails and guppies together, it wasn't so much, I lost more fry, because the swordtails seemed to eat more of the fry versus the guppies adults did. But it just, every tank's different, and I can say that your experience might be completely different, but I don't want to say they're aggressive, but they're very, they just kind of, some can be a little bit on the nippier side. Yeah. Kind of moving back. I just had that kind
more
of.
territorial, I would guess.
They're not in the sense like they need their own cave space, but they just didn't want anything swimming around their mouth. But yeah, when it comes to swordtails and guppies, I maintain their tanks the exact same way. Because the swordtails are naturally bigger, because some of those swordtails could be quite long, and when you add in their tail, the swordtail for the males, so I just gave them more space. But the ones I've had over the years, I didn't lose very many when I brought them home. They seem to be a little bit more hardy, but they're just a little bit harder to find in our particular area. When I go to the fish store, I'm more apt to find guppies than I am swordtails.
Makes sense, and it is for us around here. Well, to round out the list and to make it complete, something that is very near and dear to my heart and can be a community tank mate for almost all of these on our list would be Neocaridina shrimp.
Yes, but in the sense of saying Neocaridina shrimp, I say the cherry shrimps because I've had all different colors. They're like Skittles and rainbow colors. They come in all different. But the cherries definitely, I don't know for sure, but I think they're I don't know if it was the first one or if it's one of the longer ones, but I feel like the cherry shrimp, the red ones, have been around a little bit longer, but I could be mistaken. But I definitely feel like over the yellows and the blues and the oranges, they are just hardier than some.
I will agree they're hardier. I'll just categorize them that we have shrimp in almost every one of our tanks, and they are a great addition, not as just a cleanup crew, but for color.
Yeah, because you got to feed them. You can't just, there's nothing that's just a cleanup crew that can just live on algae and waste. You still got to feed them.
Yes. But their parameters stay with everything we've been talking about. They do prefer a little bit warmer water, like 76 is good for them. And planted tanks, they are at home in a planted tank. They are all over the place.
Yeah, for the cherries, just Neocaridina and shrimp, I think room temperature. I did heat their tank for a long time, but since talking to a lot of my friends that are shrimp keepers, you don't have to. Yes, they can live in 78 degrees Fahrenheit, but I almost feel like now that I've talked to them and we've taken a lot of the heaters out of some of those tanks that they're in, they do well from like 68 degrees Fahrenheit to like, I would say 78 degrees Fahrenheit. There's like that 10 degrees range, but I've actually, the way I kept them changed in the very beginning. I did heat their tanks, but now a lot of them, I've pulled a lot of the heaters out over just talking to some of our friends that sell shrimp. And I feel like the Neocaridinas they're easier to keep than the Caridinas because I've never kept the Caridinas and I don't know. But for our water, like you said, they definitely are a way easier and less intimidating to keep than I thought. And once I finally kept them and stopped talking myself into how hard they would be and I just kept them, they are a lot easier and a lot more hardy, and they can go in a lot of different tanks.
And come to find out, they like hard water.
Yeah,
they really like hard water.
Yeah, for the Neocaridinas, they do. And so I would say I keep them largely in sand tanks. I have a lot of them in with my guppies, but I'm not going to say that you have to heat their tanks or you don't have to heat their tanks. I just feel like now that I've taken a lot of the heaters out, they have bred. I see more shrimp eggs kind of scattered in the substrate every so often. So it might be something that you just have to see what works best for you and your aquarium. But 68 degrees Fahrenheit to like 78 degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere in that range, I would say for me, our natural fish room, I would say still it's like low 70s is what we've mainly been keeping them out here recently, and they've done a lot better than when we heated their tank.
Well, and that just kind of ties into the whole thing. Everything on this list can be interchanged and intermingled because you can keep the shrimp with the guppies. You can keep the shrimp with the minnows, the rice fish. So if you're looking for that wonderful, you don't have the room for 5-6 tanks, you have one tank and you're wanting to make a really cool community tank, on this list here you can pick out 3 or 4 that can actually work together to make an awesome tank.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing that I would be a little wary of is maybe the goldfish eating the guppies, but
Well, I meant I meant 3 or 4. I mean, obviously you have your exceptions here. You got your goldfish.
Well,
right there.
Now we have a pleco, shrimp, and a guppy tank, and it's a little bit larger, but it works. There's a lot of plants, and it just works. So yes, totally. There are a lot of these combinations. You could have white clouds and shrimps, and white clouds and guppies, and depending on the betta, if it gets along with others, there's a lot of different combinations you could try. But I just was trying to think over the years of all the different fish I've kept, and some of the ones that, if this was your first time, maybe I would probably recommend you a lot of these, because they don't require heat. You don't have to worry about heating their water, because temperature is a big factor in the fish you got to make sure. So if this is your first one, and it's just one less thing to worry about, because your white cloud minnows can handle 72 degrees and they don't have to be at 80, then it's just going to set them up a little bit easier before they maybe want to add that. But yet, if you've been keeping fish for a long time, you can completely design and breed and selective breed your entire guppy line into something that you made, and the colors you chose to, and traits you wanted, and that guppy tail strain that you came up with over 6 or 7 years. So depending on how far down the rabbit hole you want to take it, but just in the sense of easy, they're a little bit cheaper. I've had less problems. I haven't had to deal with some of the stresses of keeping some more difficult fish that I've kept over the years. I think it's a good overall list of things that are still fun to keep, whether they're easy or not. They're still really active, fun fish that I recommend.
Well, it's a top 10, I would think, well-rounded list of overall easy for everything.
Yeah.
Easy for water parameters, easy for temperature, easy size-wise to keep. I mean, they're not going to outgrow a tank, really, for most of this on the list, except maybe
asterisk goldfish.
Yeah, except for maybe the goldfish. You're not going to have all of a sudden have a monster fish on your hands, and all of them are pretty well readily available, and cost-wise, they are cost-effective.
Yeah.
So you can, if you're choosing to, you can plant the tank. So overall, it's a well-rounded group that we have kept so that you can do multiple things. It's not just a one-dimensional group.
Yeah, we got the high fin pleco or bristlenose, Plecostomus. We've got cherry shrimp.
Yep, you got your beta bettas.
We got white cloud minnows, rice fish, guppies, goldfish. Corridoras, long skirt tetra, sword tails. Did we forget anything? Guppies? Did we forget one?
I don't think so.
Well, hopefully that counted up to 10. And hopefully there's maybe a fish on here that you've been thinking about trying, and maybe we just put you over the edge to go pick up that new fish.
Yeah. I think there's only one other one on my list that I really enjoy that isn't as easy to get, but we've come across them quite a few times. And that would be the Amicus splendens, because it's really close to my heart, because it kind of looks like a little bass. It's in the
cute.
It's in the Goodeid or Goodeid family.
It's a live bear, but they they don't hold sperm like guppies. They have to mate each individual time. So yes, they are a live bear, but things are just a little bit different. But they like colder water too. It's one that you don't have to heat the tank. They can handle, if you do have a heater, they can probably handle it. But if you want them to live a little better, I would keep them in like, I don't know, 68 to 74 degrees Fahrenheit.
They're more of a room temperature fish.
You don't have to worry about the heater, but they don't get along with others. They don't eat their own fry. I have learned they leave their own fry alone.
Yes, but that's the asterisk I will put on these.
But they don't get along with others.
They're a wonderful fish, but they do not get along with other fish. They, in our little, well, we've kept them for a long time. In our experience, they are a species-only tank.
Mm-hmm. They like to be with each other, but no one else.
Yes.
But we've got them in a 55-gallon, and some of them are a little bit, probably 2 to 3 inches, but there's one female in there that she's like ginormous. She's a lot larger than the rest. She's like, I don't know, 5 inches.
She's probably 4 inches.
She's huge. But they're one that's definitely it's a harder to find live bear. Like he said, it's a Goodyear, but they are really fascinating to watch, but they're not as easy in the sense of they just don't get along. They need to be probably by themselves, and we see them a lot at the auctions when we travel, but I've never seen them in a fish store just to purchase. So it's one that you might have to look up online, but if you're wanting to have a different type of live bear, they're nice. And they're, like you said, they look like little bass. They do.
And they were on the CARES list, weren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but hopefully we taught you something new, gave you something to think about, gave you a new fish list that you want to try. And I hope you just overall enjoyed this episode.
Some new ideas for some combinations of easy to keep together fish.
Yes. So thank you so much for listening. And again, you're always invited to check out this podcast and watch it and become a member over at Science Gal Aquatics on YouTube. So thank you. But until next time.
Bye.
Bye.